Thanks to over 30,000 members of Nebraskans for Public Television, the following program is made possible. It was once thought of as the Sandhills Desert, a treeless sea of grass covering over 19,000 square miles of north-central Nebraska. A vast emptiness of gently rolling land stretching endless toward the horizon under the big clouds moving across the windswept skies. The Sandhills country has the rhythms of an ocean, and that's what it was millions of years ago. Around the time of the Homestead Act of 1862, many settlers came to live in the surrounding territory, but hardly anybody ventured into the forbidding Sandhills. It was regarded as a vast, empty, often dangerous wasteland. In 1878, a violent snowstorm drove over 6,000 cattle from the nearby Newman Ranch deep into the Sandhills. The storm was so fierce and long that the cattle were feared to be lost forever. Weeks later, when it was again fit to travel, several cowboys set out to recover what cattle they could find. To their surprise, they found not only their original 6,000 head of cattle, but almost 2,000 more. Some of these new cattle had been lost in previous years, but many had been born and raised completely in the wild. The Sandhills was not a desert, but some of the best rangeland in the world.
My name is Marietta Schumacher. My grandfather homesteaded in the Sandhills in 1887. As a child, I spent all my summers on the ranch. I love that ranch. I love the green rolling hills. Recently, I decided to take a camera to the ranch. I wanted to capture the seasons in the Sandhills and the people who make ranching their special way of life. My guide and good friend in this effort was Jake Smith. Jake is manager of the Myers Land and Cattle Company today.
Jake works the Myers Ranch year-round. From branding to haying, from calving to market, Jake knows what life is like during all 4 seasons in the Sandhills.
Well, I was just born on a small place there, and that's really all I ever knew and all I ever wanted to do, was just be on a ranch or be a rancher or whatever. Well, there is a lot of hard work connected with it, but it's a way of life where you feel like you can see where you're getting something accomplished. I mean, you can look back after a day's work and see where you've got something done, and you don't have to put up with the hassle of the city life. And the peace and quiet, I think, has probably got about as much to do with it as anything.
The winter, I think I enjoy maybe the winter most of all. There's a wonderful beauty to that land in the wintertime. And seeing those horses go out in the morning with a wagon and ride into the sunrise, it was thrilling.
Winters in the Sandhills can be quite severe, but this winter was a relatively mild one. With winter comes the arduous task of feeding the animals. The feed is taken out to the valley where the yearling steers are pastured.
We feed a lot of cotton cake and a ear of corn and stuff. They're usually standing right there waiting. They know what it is and they come running.
These Belgian draft horses are used to move stacks. using a flatbed wagon.
The bed, it's built so it's only about 12, 14 inches off the ground. You pull up beside the stack and unhook your team from the tongue and throw a cable around the stack, and one end of it's fastened to the sled, and you hook the team onto the other end and just slide it right on the sled.
The Belgians stop and start on voice command.
They're really an intelligent animal. They're powerful animals, too. It's nothing for any horse. He can pull his own weight or better. And you put a wheels under it, he can pull twice his weight. They're a lot like a dog. They're a faithful animal. And they're pretty faithful. You know, if you're their master and been taking care of them and feeding them and working them, they get to where they look up to you. All the horses are named, you know. Dick and Dan and Red and Prince and Buck and Chico, and they've got one they call Hacksaw. I don't know why he's a big old ugly thing. I guess that's why they call him Hacksaw. And there's Jim and Abner and Lady and Caesar and Jake and Jack.
Charlie was orphaned and raised on a bottle. When he got too big to stay in the house, he was turned out with the heifers. He doesn't know he's not a heifer, though he's likely to find out one day. Mealtime presents a good opportunity for the men to ride among the cattle and check them for any ailments. Here, 750 yearling heifers are wintering. They're on a special feeding program. They'll get alfalfa along with corn and oats. These heifers must be fed well in order to obtain enough growth for early breeding next June. It's April. The crabapple tree is in bloom, and the fields will soon be green. The little lakes of the sandhills reflect blue sky. In the pastures, the dregs of the winter hay are raked together and burned, leaving the pastures ready for new grass to grow. The cows are pastured together in an outdoor maternity ward. It's calving time. When the time comes for a cow to give birth, she wanders off to be by herself.
Well, you can tell by their actions. They get nervous and start walking. They'll walk off with themselves, and they'll lay down and get up and twist their tail, and they just pull away from the herd.
Normally, a calf is born front feet first, followed by the head. The calf is born in its own protective sac, which the mother will immediately begin to clean away. The cow will virtually lick the calf dry. It's vital that this be done quickly, especially if the weather is cold and there is a stiff wind and snow on the ground.
A lot of cows will start butting them around a little bit to get them to breathe. I've seen cows just shove them 10 feet, you know, to get them started to breathe and get their head out of the calf bed. And then about 20, 30 minutes, calf will be getting up. And usually in a couple hours, he's up and nursing. Well, you know he's all right then, or he's going to make it.
In a normal birth, the calf is immediately alert. Its hooves are soft, but harden quickly when exposed to air. The pasture, which had been a maternity ward, gradually becomes a nursery.
Cabin time is always a great time of the year. It's just fun to sit around and watch them. You know, after you get a week old or so to watch them play, and you can see where you're getting something accomplished.
By mid-May, the hills have turned emerald green and the grass is high. These longhorn cows and their calves are descendants of animals brought from Spain by the conquistadors 400 years ago, and it was this hardy stock that started the cattle industry in the Sandhills. The spring also finds new colts among the Belgians, descendants of the great war horses of the Middle Ages. They possess awesome strength, spectacular beauty, and dispositions that have earned them the name gentle giants. The first morning of branding dawns shrouded in mist.
That's always a kind of a big eventful day, the branding. Of course, we help a lot of the neighbors brand, and they all come and help us and just kind of have a social time. Usually get up about 4 o'clock on branding morning, about a 5 o'clock breakfast. Why, everybody have bacon and eggs, or sausage and eggs and pancakes and toast. It's a feed fit for a king, I'll tell you.
The cows and calves are rounded up in the hills and brought down toward the corral in the meadow. The bond between a cow and her calf is strong, and the riders have to be quick to keep a calf from escaping. The cows are just as upset as the calves, and it takes a line of riders to hold the animals where they're wanted.
And then, of course, they unload the branding stove, and there's 2 guys earmarks, 2 guys vaccinates, and a couple guys castrates, and a couple guys brand. And usually about 4 guys will start rope peeling the calves and dragging them out to the fire.
By this time, the calves have grown large enough to stand the branding, while still being small enough to be brought down or busted. The calf is roped, brought to the branding team, and then wrestled to the ground. The iron is taken from the branding stove, and the calf, tightly held, is branded and inoculated. A good brander burns down to just the point where the hair won't grow back. The object is not to destroy the skin.
You want to just burn that hide enough so that scab will peel off, and then leave a permanent scar.
After branding, the calves return to their mothers, who are rather anxiously awaiting their offspring. The scent of the branding can for a moment confuse the mother.
You ever notice an old cow will always walk up to the calf and smell of it first? And if it ain't her calf, she'll walk off. But if it's her own calf, why, she usually lick it a time or 2 and let it nurse a little, and then the way they'll go, they'll be paired up.
At noon, the entire crew quits for the day and returns to the ranch for the branding dinner, attended by both men and their families.
Usually have 2 or 3 kinds of meat and pies, and, well, just you name it, it's always there on the table. And long about the middle afternoon, everybody starts for home because they've got another day of it, you know.
The cow and her calf will remain together until November, when the calves are weaned. Ranching involves dealing with an endless series of problems and chores, and spring is a good time to tackle many of them. Fences are a vital concern on a ranch and have to be kept in good repair. Cows must be kept out of the hay meadows until after haying, and the bulls must be kept away from the cows until breeding time.
And then the cross fences and stuff, you have your winter range, your summer range, and then you have your hay meadows and stuff, and you don't want them on the hay meadows till after the haying's done. If you didn't have them fences, they'd spend the most of their time down on where that lush, soft grass was, you know. The big fencing operation is right now after you get through feeding and calving in the spring and start turning the cattle out on the summer range while you go around all the fences. You usually walk along it and check the post. If the post broke off, you set a new post, and every so often you stretch the wires up. The gates require more work probably because they're the ones that get tore up, get the most use and stuff. They build new gates or put in new box corners and stuff. You ought to watch them cattle when they're shedding. Walk up to a fence like that, you can see that they're really enjoying themselves to scratch them and rub that hair off.
Along with repairs to existing fences, new fences are often needed. The next chore to be tackled is a bulky windmill. Used to pump water for the cattle, this one has stopped. The plunger has to be re-leathered, a job that must be done every 1 or 2 years. The wells are drilled to what is called second water, where coarser sand helps prevent plugging.
Well, the water's all comes out of what we call shallow wells, and they're man-made. As a rule, they run from 40 to 60 foot deep.
This overhead sprinkler system waters 220 acres of alfalfa, allowing for 3 crops a year. Alfalfa is a highly nutritious winter feed for cattle. In a sense, the real product of the ranches is not cattle, but grass. Without a good hay crop each year, maintaining the ranches would be economically impossible. It's July. The haying has begun.
That goes on for about 6 to 8 weeks. Every day that, it's drying day where the hay's cured enough where the guy can go ahead and stack it. It's just important as a calving season because if you don't have no feed, you're not going to have no calves another year. So you've got to have it. On an average year, we probably have put up around 12,000 ton of hay, either baled or stacked.
techniques used on the various ranches are a study in contrast between the old and the new. Many ranches have returned to horsepower in recent years. They can work as well or better than a tractor in many operations. The two horses on the sides are young and are being trained in the haying process. It takes time to train them, but the animals are highly intelligent. Using this technique, the haying crew are able to put up from 20 to 25 stacks a day. Hay in the meadows is better than money in the bank. If a hard winter hits, the price of hay skyrockets, and even if it can be bought, it may not be possible to get it to where it's needed. Haying is the major effort of this summer, but there is always the livestock to attend to. The bulls had been turned in with the cows in mid-June, and with a gestation period of 9 months, there will be calves coming in March and April. With September comes the time for marketing. Now the heifers must be rounded up and driven into the hay yard for selection. This part of the job has changed little since the 1800s, and the scene could have been taken straight from a film from the Old West.
Well, the horse plays the most important role on it. You ride in there to the herd and you pick out the one you want. You kind of work him towards the edge of the herd, and when he gets out there, and your horse will know, you'll cue him as to which one it is. And a good cutting horse, all you got to do is just hang on, because he'll put him the rest of the way out.
Once the selected Herefords have been separated, they are counted. This morning's group numbers 202. From here, they must be moved about 5 miles to a camp from where they will be shipped. Driving a string of cattle is a good deal like pushing the end of a rope. The push can't be too quick or strong and must be applied at just the right moment. The pace must be gentle so the heifers won't lose valuable weight from overexertion. The heifers are loaded into double-bellied trucks, which will take them to Ogallala, 60 miles south, where they will be sold at auction the next day.
Whenever you can get a carload of cattle that look alike, they're about the same size and everything, they'll do a little better for you. They just look better. And the buyer, he kind of likes them that way too. You know? A lot of these feeders, they still take pride in having a good even pen of cattle, all the same color and look alike.
During the late 1870s and early 1800s, Ogallala was the northern terminus of the Great Texas Trail. It was here that the trail drivers brought their herds to sell, and northern cattlemen came to bargain. Cattle are auctioned in lots, and it's here that a ranch's profit or loss for the year is decided. The profitability of ranches in today's environment is tenuous. Combined with this price factor, the high capital investments needed for equipment sometimes makes it difficult for ranches to survive. Somebody could take all the land, sell it, and make a lot of money. Why in the world would anybody want to live this kind of life?
Well, I can see that you haven't lived in the Sandhills and enjoyed living yet anyway. But it's a way of life, and that 100 years ago, that was just a vast prairie that everybody was afraid to go into. And these old-timers went in there and they've carved a knot of living and made a bunch of money off of it in years in the past. These town people, they don't know what living is. Well, you're out there with nature. And after all, nature is one that feeds us, takes care of us anyway, so why not live close to it? Look at the young people today that are coming back, you know, and living close to nature. Here 25 years ago, you wouldn't see nobody, hikers, backpackers, and people like that. They're wanting to get back to the good old days of living in freedom. You get a lot of freedom. You ain't got nobody breathing down the back of your neck, or a guy driving up beside your red light and honking his horn at you, or crashing the side of your car up. We've got the purest water there is out there, and the good fresh air, no smog. Fella shouldn't advertise it too much, so you might have a whole bunch of people out there squatting on you.
The preceding program was provided in part by over 30,000 members of Nebraskans for Public Television.